What's up, guys? So today we're gonna be replacing another oil filter housing on a JK, and we've been requested by multiple customers to do a step-by-step video on how to replace it. So that's what we're gonna do today. We got the doctor in the house with the task today. Okay, so what's the first step?
First step, you gotta get this upper intake off. So in order to do that, you have 7 8mm bolts bolting the intake down to the lower intake.
The other ones are over here on this side.
You got this bracket over here. These two 10mm bolts right here. You wanna get these off and you wanna lightly get this bracket, create some space between here, get this connector off. Come on this side, take these two 10mm bolts off. And then in the front here, there's another bracket, a few 10mm bolts on here. Get all your Christmas trees off. Connectors, be very careful with these connectors. A lot of people break these. Once that's off, you want to pull these bolts on the intake up. Once you do that, you can lift the left side of the intake up and shift it over to remove it. That way you don't have to take this bracket off, because that can be a pain in the ass sometimes. This foam right here, you want to remove these. It's going to make it a lot easier when you're removing the intake, trust me. We'll find that.
That thing popped off.
We'll find that. Set it aside.
One little tip right here, be really careful when you remove these hoses. This plastic right here, with the heat, becomes very brittle. And if you bend it too much, it can break. So make sure that when you take it off of that slot that's back there, just try to not bend it as much to prevent this from breaking.
Mountain wrenches with swivels on them, it's gonna be one of your best friends when you're doing anything car related.
The doctor with the quickness. Remove that connector. Make sure you pop that red tab off, like so. Then it has another tab on the side of the connector. Press it and then pull back on the gray, pull forward on the gray slot, and then just pull it out. You're good to go. So as you can see, we created some separation on the bracket to the intake. It's normally supposed to be like this, but just remove the bolts, pull it up a little bit like that, and it's a little flexible, so you don't have to worry about it. And just pull it up, create a bit of separation. Once you remove the bolts for the intake, these bolts right here, all 7 bolts, and these 2 over here, what you're gonna do, you're gonna lift these bolts up, and then you're gonna shift it to the side to get it out. So one more thing, if you don't have a panel popper, get yourself one, because it makes removal of these clips so much easier. What's the next step?
Next step, getting these 8mm bolts off of it, and then we're ready to come out.
All right.
Once again, swivel sockets are going to be your best friend here. Once these are off, pull them out or lock them in an upward position so they don't get caught.
Small ones too. There we go. And once you do that, what you want to do, you grab it from the bolts, lift, shift it that side. It's going to be a little tight, so just wiggle it around a little bit, and
this hose we always get.
Yeah, that's the vacuum hose for the booster. Right there. Pop it up, pop it out, and there we go. So now we have exposed the lower intake plenum. Just just make sure you don't drop that, because you can break it or damage the throttle body, and that could be a very expensive replacement part. So once that is removed, you got the lower plenum exposed, which is this one right here. We need to remove that out of the way to be able to get to the oil filter housing. Make sure you take this off, because there are some connectors underneath. These are the injectors right here, and you're gonna have to remove these clips as well. Make sure you remove all these connectors. There's 2 clips in the back right here. These are really hard to get to. We'll show you exactly what you need to do to get to them. And there is one more connector over here with a Christmas tree attached to it. You also have to take that off, otherwise the plenum will not come up. This is why it's very important for you to have a panel popper that is a long one. So what you want to do to get to this retainer back here, you want to put it through all these lines and hoses, and in between the fuel line that connects both rails, you're gonna lift the wiring harness a little bit, and you're gonna slide it underneath. It's a little rough, and then just twist. When you twist, it comes off very, very easily. Same thing with the bottom one. Even the bottom one, sometimes you don't need a panel popper. All you gotta do is just pull it hard, and it comes off. All right, now we've got the doctor removing those clip retainers. Another thing is, you don't need to remove this line right here. You can leave it attached. Just make sure you don't bend it too much. So what he did right there, he popped off the little like retainer tab or locking tab for each one of the connectors to be able to lift it up. So normally this tab is pushed in, all the way in. It's really hard. But yeah, normally it's pushed all the way in. So when you pop it off, you're able to press the little retainer on the connector and just pull it out.
These are gonna be a little tight back here, but it's gotta have a little finesse. This little hook pick is gonna be a really good tool to have also. You get in there, you get under the red tab, and you just pop it up. It's that easy.
So now that we got the connectors off and basically everything out of the way, we can continue the removal of the intake of the lower intake plenum. Well, the way that we're gonna do that, we are gonna remove 8mm bolts. Yes, they're 8mm bolts, and there is one right here. The other one's right here. It's these 3, 4, all the way back here, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, when you remove this, you have to be really, really careful and make sure that there is no sort of trash or leaves or anything in here, like, for example, like this red little tab that is broken right there. That could drop into the combustion chamber through the valve, and then it becomes a really, really bad problem, because if we are unable to get it out of the combustion chamber, the cylinder head needs to come off. So make sure you have nothing in between the intake plenum, the lower intake plenum, and the head that could drop down there.
Can't stress this enough. Swivel sockets are gonna make this job a lot easier.
Once all the bolts are off, pull it up, and then just move it out of the way. You can turn it like this. Okay, so the line can look like this. Nothing happens to it. It's flexible. If you don't want to spill any fluid, any fuel, so just move it to the side like this. And this is what it looks like inside without the lower intake plenum. And that's the part we need to replace. That's the oil filter housing.
So the next step, we're gonna remove this oil cooler housing. We got two electrical connectors back here, one on the coolant temp sensor, and one on the oil temp sensor down here. Oil pressure sensor, sorry. And then we have this coolant line right here. What we like to do is we like to pinch off this coolant hose. That way the loss of coolant and the mess is very minimal. You're still gonna have a mess, but it just makes it a little easier. Now there's 5 bolts holding down this oil filter housing. It's an inverted E Torx. That's what it looks like. You can see it right there. It's a size 8.
That's the tool you need to remove the oil filter housing. Don't use a 6-point socket on these bolts. If they were a little bit bigger, we wouldn't say that. You can definitely use a 6-point, but these are small. So if you don't use the right size, you can strip them, and then it can become a problem. And you might end up here at Shift Auto Works having us remove it.
These are your pinch off pliers. You won't damage the hose. These are flat. Just like that.
You're gonna be in a video, Rich. So you pinch it like that, and just make sure it's tight. All right. Go ahead.
All right, to get these connectors off, it's got a lock tab on here. You're gonna want to pull back. On the bottom is a release tab. Push the tab in, and you have it. The oil pressure sensor down here. Gonna need.
That one's a little bit harder to get to, and sometimes it can be a little stuck in there, so you have to like use something to pry it off, like so. Once it starts sliding off, just push. It should come off. So to remove that clamp down there, or that coolant hose that we just pinched, you're gonna need a set of needle noses, and you're gonna compress that clamp like that. It can be difficult because of the location where it is, and you don't really have the space to put the pliers in there, so you're gonna struggle with it a little bit until you're able to get it off. All right, so once you remove that coolant hose right there, you're gonna have a little bit of a spill in the middle of the valley. It doesn't matter, just keep removing it. Now we're gonna take off the bolts.
Now it is gonna get a little messy, but it's up to you how good you guys want to clean it. We do a pretty good job. We have a suction sucker that we get all the stuff out, and then we use brake clean, towels, etc. So
now when you pull it up, a lot of oil is gonna spill out of it, so make sure you just do it quick and turn it. And there it is right there. As you can see, it kind of leaked a little bit more coolant in there, but it's not really that bad. As long as you pinch that hose right there, you should be good. We're putting in there. it's already assembled, ready to go. Comes with gaskets, sensors, coolant temperature sensor, filter, everything. The filter, we're gonna go ahead and put a new one in there because we don't like aftermarket filters over here at Shift AutoWorks. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's easier to put the hose and the clamp back on without the cooler being installed in the engine block. So if you can do that, just go ahead. It makes it easier. Then we're gonna put it in. Housings that are made out of aluminum come with different types of bolts. Make sure you use the right bolts for it. The ones on the plastic one have a sleeve around it, so you cannot use them on the aluminum one. Make sure you get those bolts threaded into the block before tightening them up to make sure that they go in straight. Torque to spec. There we go. When you've done this for many years, you know how tight things need to be sometimes. After everything is installed, make sure you clean the surface where the lower intake plenum is gonna sit, and put the new gaskets in. Make sure you replace these. On the top end, it also has gaskets. Gotta replace those. Once it's placed in between the block, you can replace those.
Awesome. Got it? I got it.
So place it in there, make sure it's placed properly and the bolts are aligned. Thread in the bolts first and then tighten them up real good. The doctor lost its tools. Thank you. So once it's all properly connected and secured, injectors are in, properly connected and secured, the Christmas trees retainers are already in. Go ahead and replace those gaskets, put the new gaskets in. Once we put those new gaskets in, we are able to put the intake plenum back in the vehicle, and that is pretty much it. All we got to do after that is check the oil level and the coolant level, make sure that that is properly filled. Turn it on, let it get to operating temperature, and then drive it. Make sure that there is no other leaks. So that's how it's supposed to look when you got those gaskets installed. Make sure you put this insulator back in here, move stuff out of the way, bring the intake plenum. And what you're gonna do, you're gonna slide it in on this side first. Make sure it's seated almost all the way down. Move it that way to clear this bracket, then bring it back to put the bolts through the bracket. And then don't forget to put the nuts back in. Reconnect everything back to where it's supposed to be. Map sensor, very important. Throttle body connectors down there, very important. put all the bolts back in, retighten everything, put this bracket back in there, reconnect this connector, which is this one right here, and connect these PCV lines back into the intake. Be careful with those because they can break, like I said in the beginning of the video. And that is pretty much it. I don't know, 45 minutes of working. Do you think that's hard?
It's not hard, it's tedious, but a lot of things can go wrong if you're not careful and you don't have the right tools. So just pay attention to that. Yeah.
Expert advice from the doctor. All right, see you guys on the next one.